Jonathan Para has designed over 4,500 paywalls, more than anyone on Earth.
And that's probably closer to 4,500 now. I really need to start actually counting.
He went into this line of work thinking he could find a set of golden paywalls that would work everywhere. The best paywall template you could just copy and paste. He was wrong.
Yeah, I think the most surprising one across the board for everyone was that there is no perfect paywall. You would expect the performance to be, around the same, and it could just flounder completely in one app versus another.
But along the way, he found a bunch of counterintuitive wins, like how a paywall with less information and a generic continue button could beat a much more descriptive one by 111%, or how a simple bullet point paywall is one of the few designs that performs well across almost every category.
Bullet list paywalls actually are one of the few paywalls that perform well across the board. Just single page bullet list paywall. That's a benchmark.
What he also figured out was that most founders are testing the wrong things. They obsess over pricing when the biggest lever is actually the design and packaging.
Price and packaging design is one of the biggest levers that you can pull for paywall experimentation. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of mistakes that people make when they're creating their price package design.
And sometimes the most basic native looking design can crush a highly customized one.
I was like, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way it's going to do good. And the Swift UI style actually outperformed everything by quite a long shot.
He also uncovered patterns in what makes consumers willing to pay for AI wrapper apps that have custom prompt.
It seems like users are willing to pay for prompts, essentially, to have that custom prompt and have something that is really tailored to that specific problem. You're essentially paying for that as a user.
In this episode, Jonathan shows us just about everything he knows about making money with apps, from the simple hacks that bump conversion rates like adding no commitment, cancel anytime, to the system he uses for designing winning paywalls, down to the psychological triggers that make users feel safe hitting that continue button. This is a masterclass in paywall design from the person who has seen more tests than anyone else. Let's get into it. This is the Superwall podcast, and I'm Joseph Choi, founder of Consumer Club. The members in the Consumer Club Discord and the founders I interview on the pod build apps at a median of 1 million ARR. A lot of these apps that make the most money run A/B tests on their paywalls to make more revenue with the same number of users. Superwall has a lot of data on the thousands of apps that use their paywalls, so recently they put together a free AI tool trained on 422 profitable paywall experiments. It lets you upload a screenshot of your own paywall and gives you an experiment idea to increase your revenue. You can use it for free at paywallexperiments.com. Also, if you're building a mobile app doing at least 100K a month in revenue, Superwall hosts dinners in San Francisco and New York. They keep each gathering small, thoughtful, genuinely useful for everyone. If you meet this criteria of 100K a month in revenue and want an invite, apply using the type form in the description. Let's get into the pod. So Jonathan, you've designed more than 4,000 paywalls as the lead designer at Superwall. So the sponsor of this podcast, or like the channel that we're on right now, is Superwall. They do the paywall experimentation, but you are the designer that actually by hand created people's paywalls in Superwall, like who are customers of Superwall. So you probably have an insane amount of knowledge on A/B tests and things that work and don't work for paywalls, like what actually converts and makes money. So I want to just dig into actual examples of paywalls that you've designed and just show us like the best ones. So yeah, before we get into that, I just want to hear a little bit from your side, like how you think about this, and do you have principles for like what makes great paywalls?
Yeah, so I joined Superwall actually when they were pre-revenue, and I joined and we were doing paywalls and Webflow. And at some point we were running so much traffic through Webflow that I think we cost Webflow, 12% of their egress costs. So I would, before they kicked us out. And so when I was designing paywalls in Webflow, we eventually moved to the editor, and then I was designing paywalls in like Svelte, so just coding some paywalls. And then we moved into the current iteration of the editor. And so I've seen it all. I've seen what it's like to work on like paywalls that were working really well 3 years ago, and the evolution of the space, and everyone copies each other. And so I see people trying a lot of new things and new designs and new approaches. And so now it's a really interesting kind of creating this system that mixes all of the experience that I have seen just with all the paywalls out there throughout my time at Superwall. So I'm excited to dig in here.
It's crazy. And I just saw this tweet, like this is from September 2024. So that was like about a year ago. You said in 2 years, I've designed 2,000 mobile app paywalls, more than anyone on earth. And then now in your bio, you said 4,000 plus, which is another 2,000 in the past year. Which is,
and that's probably closer to 4,500 now. I really need to start like actually counting, have a tracker for every paywall that I've designed.
So you have this entire slide deck on all like the best practices for paywall. So I want to get into that, but I actually wanted to start with this slide because you have like example slides of like which one won the A/B test. So I'm gonna try to guess myself, and then you can tell me the answer and why. So okay, here's like the control and the variant. This is like on the left you have the weekly, annual, monthly, and then on the right you have annual, monthly, weekly, and the annual is highlighted on top on the right side. You have the check mark that says no commitment, cancel anytime. I'm gonna guess the right side. Oh, and then look, the button is also different. It says put AI into action on the left, and then right you say continue. So actually, it's hard to say. Like maybe the copy on the button is higher, makes it higher converting, but then on the right, the check mark that says no commitment, cancel anytime. Yeah, I'll just guess the right one. Why was this 10% better?
Yeah, so I want to preface this that this is a deck that we presented at a Superwall office hours, actually. So if you've never gone to a Superwall's office hours, definitely recommend it. Everything that I've learned at Superwall with A/B testing comes directly from Jake and Nick Godwin. So I worked really closely with Nick, and he's just a master at all this, but he's not very publicly active. And I think he will be more this year. So he's really great guy to follow in the space. And he like really led the consumer growth calls when I was at Superwall, and I supported him on the design side with like all these ideas that we had for customers. So in this particular case, this follows one of the principles that I learned from Nick, which is that price and packaging design is one of the biggest levers that you can pull for paywall experimentation. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of mistakes that people make when they're creating their price package design, typically in the footer. So here on the left paywall, you have this verbiage, right? You see AI assistant weekly, AI assistant annual, monthly. So that's just a lot of copy there that you don't really need, right? You're repeating yourself a lot. Users don't read, and so you want to have visual design more, like just show up more than kind of copy, because people aren't really gonna read, so you just kind of want it to flow a little bit better. And so on the right, that blurb, no commitment, cancel anytime, is just like a simple hack that you add to almost every paywall, and it's very granular percentage bump on the conversion rate. So we just have that. You simplify the plan naming, so you see annual plan, monthly plan, weekly plan. The right side is the same. You like to have this comparison on the pricing to like the lowest plan usually. And then with the badge, you have this limited time, 70% off. You don't need the limited time. So you just remove that, add it to the center so it looks more visually appealing. And the continue button, typically that put AI into action, you want to have copy that lets the user know this is like something is happening, or you want to reiterate the USP of the product. But in a lot of cases, we like to just have continue, because it kind of like lets the user gently go down that funnel to the conversion stage. So in this case, the biggest reason for the conversion rate increase is the products group here. It's just a lot cleaner, and having that no commitment, cancel anytime, just call out, works really well.
It seems like everything on the right side is simplifying. It's like on the left, you have the limited time, you have a little bit of urgency, you just eliminate that. You name each thing, like AI assistant weekly, you just like eliminate that and just call it weekly. And then instead of the CTA being descriptive, you just say continue. So I think all of that makes sense to me, except for the limited time. This is just a basic marketing principle that like urgency should improve conversion rates. Is it just too salesy, or like why do you think that doesn't help?
The text size is just too small. So if you ever do something like limited time off, you want to have it on a heading. So there's a lot of one-time offer paywalls that will have that in the heading, and then it's just really clear what's happening there. In this case, it's just better to have that 70% off for now, unless this is a specific one-time offer paywall, which in this case it's not. So this is just a regular paywall.
Already got 2 gold gems. Simplify things and then just put this in every time. This little hack, no commitment, cancel anytime. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, okay, interesting. So now it changed a little bit towards eliminating the monthly plan. So now it's just annual, weekly, and then it says start my 3-day trial. Well, okay, I'm gonna guess the trial was better than having no trial. Okay, yeah. Why was this? This is a pretty dramatic increase. Why was this one so much better?
Right. So in a lot of my experiments lately, what I've been doing is kind of simplifying what the user gets from a paywall. So if a user sees all of these options, it's kind of scary, right? You kind of give them some decision fatigue. And a lot of the times now, I won't even have the product group in the main footer here. I'll kind of hide it behind a view all plans button or something like that. But in this case, you're first of all highlighting that annual plan. And you also kind of want to, whenever you do have a product group like on the left with 3 products, you want to have the order of length for the product subscription go from like the longest to the shortest, or vice versa, right? Like you don't want to split it up like weekly, annual, monthly. You want to have a cadence that follows, either descending or ascending order for just the product subscription length. And in this case, like what you're doing here is you are highlighting the 3-day plan. And so you're increasing that free trial conversion rate, and you're showing that, yeah, the weekly has no plan, but looking at this customer, you also know that, oh, LTV for yearly is highest and ARPU is highest. So you want to nudge customers to subscribe to the yearly plan. And so you still have that selected, but you give them that weekly plan offer with the start my 3-day free trial copy. And so it's a lot clearer what's happening than put AI into action. And so the user just has that, they feel a lot safer about continuing and subscribing to the offer, even if a lot of the times, 50% of the time actually, like on average, they'll just cancel after subscribing. But it still gives you the opportunity to then showcase your product, especially if it's a hard paywall. This paywall's not. And then once you have the user in the funnel, you can do more stuff to kind of keep them.
Do you have a take or an explanation on why weekly became a thing? Because I feel like this is like maybe in the past few years. Like before that, I feel like everything was pretty standard, like monthly or annual.
Yeah, it's interesting lately, and I think it's because of the rise of these AI wrapper products that are kind of churn and burn. And you have a high weekly subscription rate that gets the user in, and they may not want to commit to annual. But then you also have a lot of users that just forget to unsubscribe and stop paying for these products. So a lot of the time, weekly, our users will pay more in the weekly plan than if they would have just paid for the annual plan. But it's also a good way to see whether a user is willing to pay, X amount of dollars when you're doing price testing for a weekly plan and not go into a year-long commitment. We're seeing less of that actually, especially for social apps and apps that are kind of multiplayer. It seems like weekly and monthly have become a lot more popular. So in this case, actually, I would have probably had another variant that had annual and monthly as a test as well. I can't exactly remember what the monthly stats were, but yeah, this is just an example where sometimes annual and weekly price packaging will win as opposed to annual and monthly. So it's really nice to be able to test even things like that.
So you would actually put it into annual, weekly, and then a different variant that's annual, monthly, but you wouldn't put all 3 together?
I would if it's hidden behind some kind of view all plans button.
I see. So annual, weekly, and then you click a small button that says view all plans, and then the monthly is like also there. But you don't want to put out because it's too much information.
Yep. I also have another example where this is a little gray hat, and lately I've been doing a lot more gray hat type of paywalls that I can share with you. So this is a paywall that I created for a customer. So this is a Clear 30 paywall that I saw in the Superwall podcast actually. And this is really good for paywalls that are, they transform the user over the course of a week or a month or, some other timeline. And so it has like really nice steps on kind of how you're going to be in after you're kind of done with this plan. And so it positions the user as the hero in their story, which is great. You always want to have a hero's journey funnel if you can have it. So here we have that no commitment, cancel anytime subtitle here that I add on almost every paywall. It just bumps conversions. Sometimes I'll also have a chevron right arrow here on the buttons, and that also bumps up conversions. In this case, I didn't. I just don't want to test too many things at a time, and I do want to have that variant for a later test, so I just didn't have that here. But this is defaulted to the yearly product. Yearly is usually highest LTV, and so we like to promote that first. This particular product, I have like $30 to $40 per year. It's kind of what's standard now for these AI wrapper products, especially if the inference costs are mostly text. When you start getting into images and videos, your inference costs are a lot higher, so your yearly prices also, and prices in general, are going to be higher. But the user might say like, okay, yeah, this looks cool. They may look at this and they see that build, yearly. They're like, maybe I'm not ready for the yearly plan. So they go and close the paywall. And then a drawer comes up, not ready to commit for a year. We have plans for everyone. You still have yearly selected because I still like to see if the user will subscribe to yearly. But if not, I have monthly here. And then what I'm doing here in this instance, I might have set this, because originally it might have had a weekly product, but you have yearly and weekly or something here. And then the weekly price for yearly compared to the weekly price for that secondary product. So you can see like, weekly is going to be a lot more expensive than yearly, but you may convert here. And then that will let me know, okay, they did hit monthly. And I'm seeing in the Superwall charts that we're seeing a lot of monthly customers. And so that then if we see a lot of monthly customers, we may conclude or have an assumption that maybe we didn't do a good enough job in onboarding, really showing off the product. Typically we see with weekly and monthly subscribers, they subscribe because they're still not sure if this is going to be a good solution for them. And if they hit not now, thanks here, you can see that one-time offer paywall where you give them some kind of deal. And then this yearly price is going to be the discounted rate. So instead of $40 per year, it'll be $30 per year. And you can grab the deal then. And then you see that chevron here that I was talking about earlier. So this is something that I like to do a lot as well, especially for apps that have done a lot of testing. And I'm curious to see if I see something wrong with their conversion rate, or it's not as high as what I think it could be, or they're just underperforming in their app category. And so this is one of my go-tos now for apps that have done a lot of testing, because it's not something that a lot of them do.
Yeah, on that second screen, that was really interesting. Just on the very first screen, you just say start, and in small text, it shows you the full price, $39 a year. And then once you go into it and X out, then it's the same exact pricing and it's the same highlight. It's going to be $39 a year. But then on the right, you show the per week pricing. So it's 76 cents. So it's the same price, but it's just frames differently. So I feel like this intermediate step actually just psychologically, it's just like basically saying to the user, oh, I see that you didn't like when the tray came up and the Apple Pay was like, $39. By the way, did you know $39 is only 76 cents per week? And it's like, and you're basically just like, you have one more try at getting them to see like, oh, this price is the same price, but it's frames differently. And then if they still say no thanks, then you give the discount. And then so for the 33% discount, is there a reason why it's 33?
I just like to see something that shows the user value. So you could go between 25 and 33, I think, in most of your one-time offers, because a lot of the times you want to save your really big and juicy sales for something like Black Friday or Cyber Monday. And you don't want to, show that you're discounting the product way too much in just a regular test, because you do want to save those sales for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or at a certain point, if you do too much, you run too many sales, and you have users that open paywalls and they see this and close it for some kind of freemium app, for example, and they use the app, or you can have them use the app without signing up, and they have some kind of rate limit. They get used to seeing that, and it kind of cheapens the product a little bit. So especially for the larger apps, I don't like to run large discounts because I don't want to cheapen their brand. So in this case, 33% is just arbitrary for, let's see, $29.99 is actually like what a lot of these AI wrapper apps use as their yearly. And so everyone just started copying each other. And this is just one of the prices that the market kind of settled on, where you can still be profitable and have good margins, and it's still fairly affordable to the user.
One thing that this pricing made me think about is ChatGPT and Claude benchmarks, because those cost $20 a month, which is a lot more expensive than this, which is like $40 a year. Do you have any insight into why consumers are willing to pay so much less for standalone apps? I mean, obviously, ChatGPT and Claude are huge brands, and there's just a lot more, trust, and they have the base model and all that. But is there anything else that's contributing? Have you ever seen apps charge, ChatGPT or Claude levels?
Yeah, actually, I had a discussion with someone just before the holidays about this, because they're billing their product at, I think, $20 to $22 per month. And it's a chat product, on their phone. But what they've done is they've really nailed down the prompt, and it's very personalized for that specific niche. And so it seems like users are willing to pay for prompts, essentially, to have that custom prompt and have something that is really tailored to that specific problem. There was another app that I had a sales call with yesterday, and they're in the health space, and they launched 2 to 3 years ago, but they're still getting, consistent revenue, even though ChatGPT, Claude, essentially all these state-of-the-art models have come out, and yes, they're very general and they can do a lot, but the big bottleneck is still in the prompt. And so I think if you have an app that solves a very specific issue, you can get away with charging a fraction of what you charge for with ChatGPT. And if you have a good prompt and you have a good flow, you're essentially paying for that as a user. You're paying for a custom N8N flow with good prompts, so that you don't really have to think about doing all this. You just have it work. So I think that's what's happening with a lot of these apps and why they're so successful.
That's very interesting. How recently have you seen this trend of custom prompted, kind of high price chat apps?
I've seen it probably in the last year. And it works. If you target an insecurity, so some kind of emotional issue that a user has, probably the higher you can charge for it. The LooksMax apps, they were one of the first, I think, forays into the space where they were charging quite a bit of money to improve your physical looks, right? That's always a big thing. And then in the dating aspect, you scan your text messages, like screenshots or Tinder conversations, and then you get a good reply. So those are good examples of custom prompted models that they've been fine-tuned to give you actually good results, and people are willing to pay for that. Those apps have existed for the last, I think, 3 years, but in the last year, I saw more of an uptake on this. And I think it's because the models are just getting so good now that the custom prompts are, they're doing a lot more. So the value is higher, so you can charge a little bit higher too.
Very interesting. Yeah. That's pretty bullish on the whole consumer app space. I feel like it's actually, I can see the vision. There's a lot of vertical AI consumer apps that are actually like really high value, and consumers are just not going to put in the effort to make an N8N flow and make sure the memory gets routed correctly and make sure like, you know, the prompt is like thoroughly done. And I see it. That's actually a really good observation. Okay, let's go back to the paywalls because we had one more screen that I wanted to look at. So there's this one. And this seems like it's like a different lesson that we're trying to figure out. So this is the before and after. The left side is upgrading from free to premium, and then there's like the comparison chart, and you have 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. 12 is most popular, and then you continue. And then the right side is just, we want you to try the app for 50% off, and it's just a huge picture of the app on the phone screen, and then it says continue. And I'm guessing that once you click continue, it just immediately brings up the tray that lets you check out. So this feels kind of similar to the last one that you showed. So I'm going to guess the right side. The 111% conversion rate increase. Why is this so much better?
Yeah, this one is, you would think that getting users to compare is a good thing, but in many cases, whenever I have a table component in one of my paywalls, it doesn't do as well as even simple bullets or a video or some kind of visual cue. And this goes back to what I said earlier, that users just don't read. And so they look at a paywall like this and they're just overwhelmed. You have a lot of copy, even in the product selector group here. You're doing, $49.99, not $99.99, this monthly price, bill quarterly. You're like, there's so much going on there, and it's like, it's very confusing to the user what's kind of happening. And so if you remove that friction then and make that simpler, the user's like, oh, okay, they just continue. A lot of the times when I look at how like friends and family just use apps, and I'm really proud of this onboarding, that I create, and I really want to show it off, and I want to see, what they've done. And I'm like, they don't read, they just hit continue. And so it takes a lot of the psychology from what you're just doing with typical product design, and you're creating it on the paywall. So in this case, actually continue takes you to another screen, and there is more information. It's just not on this slide, but the point is that when you simplify the paywall, so in this case, that we want you to try app name for 50% off. I saw CalAI doing this quite a bit, and I took it from what they were doing, and across the board, it was just working well. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's or at least like the 50% off portion, but I did like that we want you to try an app name for free is what I typically do if you have a free trial product selected. And that just works well. And it's just having either a video or a really nice image of the product in action just works well. And here you have again that no commitment canceling time. The button is bigger, so I like to use 65 points as the button height at a not at a minimum, because I do use 56 points or something sometimes. But you want the call to action to be large, right? And the text in the call to action also to be large. So Jake had a lot of us in the Superwall side projects channel, and he just sometimes just posts gems like this, and we just update it on paywalls, and of course they work. So yeah, it's just some of the learnings you should have on this. So this is a much simpler paywall. It works a lot better, which you see the significant increase in conversion rates and ARPU.
So in the last one, you said 33% off, and then this one is 50% off. And then you said you can also do it where you say, like, we want you to try for free, and then you present the free trial. In the paywall that you screen shared and you showed me, it was like you presented the free trial as the intermediate step. In this case, it seems like you would present the free trial as like the first offer, as like, oh, you said you click the X, well, we actually want you to try it for free, and then you immediately take them down. So like, what are the differences between when you would use like these different options?
Yeah, a lot of the times, if you don't have a product that costs you a lot of inference, you may want to try giving the user a free trial and see if you have stickiness in your product. So if you offer a free trial and you have pretty high churn and you know that your onboarding is good, a lot of people are going through it, but you still have a lot of churn, then you know it's a product issue. This lets you know how well of a job did you do in onboarding, selling the customer, and are they willing to subscribe without trying the app? And there you're testing how big of a problem is this, and are they willing to pay at this price range for either this monthly product, this yearly product, this weekly product. So there's so much testing that you can do, and the psychology behind it is you design the paywall based on what your assumptions are and what you want to test, and you almost never run out of things to test. I remember when I was at Superwall, I was on Slack and I worked with customers that were running tests very consistently for all 3 years that I was there. And so they always had something to test. And this is just one example of the many things that you can test for an assumption that also gives you good feedback on your product. So whether you have a good product or not ties into the performance of the paywall.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm just like imagining your time at Superwall that you just must have like absorbed so much stuff. Is there anything that was like that sticks out as the most surprising result that kind of changed the trajectory of like paywall philosophy?
Yeah, I think the most surprising one across the board for everyone was that there is no perfect paywall. I really thought that we would be able to create like a set number of these are golden paywalls that you can use everywhere and they'll perform about the same. And even across, you have one paywall that is in an app in the same app category. You would expect the performance to be, around the same, and it could just flounder completely in one app versus another. And so my biggest lesson was there is no standardization for like what you can have in a paywall, and every customer is just going to be different for some reason. And so the best thing that we ended up doing was just creating a component system that you have things that work across all paywalls, and it's just nice to be able to drop them into each paywall. And I think some components work better than others, but it's still best to experiment with all of them. So for example, I like having a heading with a bullets list of the product and a simple, footer for the call to action as kind of like the main paywall, because then I can see that's a benchmark. Bullet list paywalls just actually are one of the few paywalls that perform well across the board, just single page bullet list paywall. And I can share my screen also with like what this looks like. So this is an example of a paywall that I've added onto that. So this is what I would usually make something like the first paywall for a customer, because it has a lot of things that make it look like a trustworthy paywall. You have your USP, right, with some kind of subtitle, your bullets, social accolades, and then the subtitle and a continue button. You may also show pricing here, but I don't have pricing here in this example because it's a multi-page paywall. But then I would take, okay, if this is my main paywall and I want to see how it performs across other variants, I may just add to this paywall. So what I like to do is, okay, maybe I want to have an image. So this is like very fitness AI inspired type of paywall with an image and then USP continue button. So I would then create a variant like this where I add some kind of visual cue of the product or the product in action, either as an image or a video. And that's the beauty of it. You can have multiple variants that you're testing against and then continue there. And you show this, and I'm still not done. So you continue more to show even more social proof, especially if it's a larger app that has a lot of users. Social proof works really well. And then they just see all these positive reviews, and then you can try 7 days free with that chevron arrow. So you can see also, this is pretty large font on the CTA compared to like a lot of the other things, and a pretty large button, right, with that chevron. So just having a big CTA that is very prevalent across the board works well. So I wanted to show this as an example of a good paywall that works really well across the board. So even though I did mention there, no paywall will ever, you can't expect it to perform about the same no matter the app category. This is still kind of a tried and true, simple paywall that gets you started at least and gives you a good baseline to then experiment off of. And you can see what your improvements are over time, because this will give you a good baseline to start with.
So is this the very first screen in the paywall? Is there something before this?
In this example, it's the second screen, but in what I'm trying to say is that for most people, this should be your first screen, and you should have a paywall that it's only one screen with this, and use that as your baseline, especially for newer apps.
And then,
but in this case, this is the main screen. Yeah.
So you started with that second screen, and then after you tested things, then you added like the one before it and the two after it.
Yeah, multi-page paywalls sometimes work well. I like to test them, and I like them because you can add different things to the different pages. So maybe instead of bullets here, I could have tried a table instead of bullet lists. I could have moved these accolades to this next screen. There's so much that you can do in your design tests. So design tests really are the bread and butter of anyone that wants to improve their KPIs with A/B testing for paywalls. You'll get more mileage out of design tests and price packaging testing than really anything else. So I've worked with some apps that they just started A/B testing, and then they have all of these pricing that they added, and then they immediately want to start experimenting with pricing. But what that does is it actually creates quite a bit pain in the ass to manage, because in Superwall, at least, you have to have all those users in an audience in a specific cohort. So you have to put them, use user seeds to kind of manage them. And then you have to manage them for every time that you want to run an experiment. And so it just becomes a little bit more difficult to manage once you start doing price testing. So it's not something that I like to do immediately. It's something that I like to do kind of later down the line after we've ran a lot of tests.
That's really helpful. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's interesting that you have like the insight, or the most surprising insight was that there is no one paywall. But there still sort of is a one starter paywall that you can kind of use as, it's not going to be, the absolute best, like out of any paywall in the world, but it will be like it sounds like around like 80% there, and then you can like optimize it further. And then it seems like maybe the reason why there is no like one best paywall is because there's so many different types of apps. In the Clear 30 paywall that you tweeted about, you say, if your product takes the user on a multi-day or week journey, this Clear 30 inspired paywall seems to be working across all categories. But it's not just all apps, it's all categories if you take the user on a multi-day week journey in this style of like, because Clear 30 is like addiction recovery app where it's like by the end of week 1, you'll see how you've progressed. So, and I could just imagine there's so many different dimensions of types of apps that you could think of. Like there's multi-day or week journeys, there's one where it's like just a daily action thing, there's one where it's like a one-time thing. Like there's just so many different types of apps. So do you feel like these, like when you do find these gems that are like, oh, this just seems to be the best one, does that last forever, or is there also kind of like a consumer psychology culture and trends thing where once everyone starts using the same paywall, it just doesn't work anymore?
That doesn't seem to be the case for what I've done. So I thought maybe with the Clear 30 inspired paywall, it's a good paywall that works across app categories, but it's very specific to apps that they have a clear USP and a clear hero's journey. So for paywalls that are targeting that archetype, yes, there are state-of-the-art paywalls that you can test. Whereas other paywalls, you may have to get a little bit more creative and try to test things. But if you're targeting a specific thing, or your product follows the roadmap of like other products, then you can have similar state-of-the-art paywalls that do work fairly well, without any like half-life really across the time that people use those paywalls and they see them and then they start copying them. So for example, the Blinkist paywall with the free trial timeline, where like today you unlock the app, day 5 you get a notification, day 7 billing starts. That is a paywall that people have been using for years, and it's still a very high performing paywall.
One thing this makes me think of is this one of the most popular types of apps that you've seen recently? Or is there, if you could think of a genre of app across categories, but like a type of app that, maybe it's a chat wrapper or, something else, like is there a dominant category you see recently?
There's the AI wrappers. Whenever a new model comes out, there's a lot of people rushing to use that model as a wrapper. And so I just see a lot of AI apps, period, right now. But the best apps that I've seen are apps that really put a lot of intention behind creating a closed loop in the app. So, this paywall works well because in apps like this, you have a closed loop where the user can expect something after they've finished using your app. There's a clear feedback loop of who you are before you start using the app and who you are after using the app. And so conversion rates across the board for those apps that have a closed loop system, they just work so well. For apps that have multiplayer, there's more involved, right? Like I see apps also testing, like especially the dating apps or social apps, they have 2-tier systems where you have, very much like ChatGPT, you have a Pro and a Plus plan, or a Pro and a Max plan, and then those have different price packaging, and they're going to be yearly, weekly, monthly, or quarterly across 2 pricing tiers, and that's also a pain in the ass to manage. But I am seeing that the more apps coming out with 2-tier billing systems, especially if they're also AI apps in the image or video space, because it just takes more compute, or you have a set subscription price, and then you're rate limited, and then you can buy more credits to be able to use it more. Those apps are not as common, I've seen, where you have like credits after you see them, but I think it's also like a good way to then have upsell paywalls. So I haven't been able to see, well, is it because people just aren't paying, for credits, and maybe the subscription credit system like is not so popular. But then I'm on X and I see, Claude users just going through their max plan and then have to, either buy more credits or use the API. So it works for these LLM labs, and I'm just surprised I haven't seen more of that in the consumer app space.
So it seems like for the consumer app space, you're seeing like AI wrappers, but then the ones that actually make the most money are the ones that have some sort of transformation journey, where it's not just, hey, use this and generate some images or generate some text or videos. It's like, do this, and what does that mean for you? Well, it means like this will be the transformation. Here's the benefits in this amount of time, which is kind of like what the guys at Clear30 talked about, like the whole like Hormozy value equation thing. This is like one paywall that you like to apply for this like journey type of app. Are there any other like popular paywalls that you're seeing these days?
Yeah, I like to use video paywalls a lot. So let me give you another example. This one is a good one that works across the board as well, or like at least this type of design. I have Rotato templates that just kind of show the app in action, and you get like a clear value prop by seeing what the app does. And then if you have other people already using your app, it's nice to have that social proof here and some simple bullets. So this paywall was the winner in the test. It's just simple social proof with a video and bullets, so you see what you get, and you're comparing the monthly and the yearly here, right? And then you do have that copy to your starting micro, right? So very good targeted copy for a largely female demographic for this app. So this is also one that works well across the board with this type of format. And this actually was inspired by Mojo. But for the most part, like you're putting some components down here, and then you're swapping out those components, and either the video changes, you add a slider, you add some text in that slider. There's a lot that you can do with also this type of paywall. But this one works pretty well usually too, because it's very visual.
That's really cool. I like that a lot, actually. It kind of reminds me of like when you promote the app on TikTok and then you show like the phone in hand demo, and it's a nice, like, engaging way to look at the app. Do you use a software to build the video for this?
Yeah, Rotato is the only one that I know of right now that can do something like this, and you can control a lot of the keyframes in Rotato to just move around like in the presentation for whatever you're doing. But typically what I do is I just record myself using the phone or the app on my phone, and then I just drop in that recording, and it just creates this video pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, that's really cool. The other thing I noticed about this is those yellow circle check marks on this paywall look like the iPhone Notes app. Like, was that intentional? Like, do you use UI?
No, in this case, it's just the brand assets of this particular app.
It's just good branding, I guess. I do like when like UIs use like familiar interface elements. It just makes it feel a little bit more trustworthy. But yeah, okay, that's cool. Are there any like really big apps that use this? I think you mentioned one of them.
Mojo uses this style a lot. To go back to something you mentioned earlier, I would not discount also creating a Swift UI looking paywall. I actually I worked on a couple paywalls for Pedometer Plus, and their design system just follows the typical Swift UI design. So they really didn't customize the app too much and made it look like a very Apple-esque app. And so when designing their paywall, it had to look very Apple-esque. And I was like, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way it's going to do good. And I tried to also create other variants that were a little bit more designed and just a little bit more custom outside of the Swift UI style. And it actually, the Swift UI style actually outperformed everything by quite a long shot. So I'm not, and that could be because, you know, the rest of the app was already in that kind of design. So it wasn't a big change in what the user was kind of expecting in the paywall. But I have done that twice actually. And so I did try it with another app and I was surprised by the results that the Swift UI looking app actually does perform fairly well. So I would recommend also trying something with just Apple's Swift design language.
Yeah. Could you show an example of that?
So this is actually a template on Superwall that you can customize to make it look very Swift UI looking. And the reason for that is, you know, a lot of the times Swift UI will have like the app icon or something up here, you know, SF Pro, you know, text or SF Pro rounded. And it has these like really Swift UI looking type of like list items styles. So, you know, Snapchat does, I think, a good job in making it custom, but also kind of following Swift UI and design guidelines. This looks like it could be like a Swift UI design and app, but still custom, right? So still like a nice customizable experience. So it's not the Swift UI blue, right? They still kind of add their own flair to it. So this is probably another example for this. But you can see in this example, like it's still a bullet list. So it's heading with bullets, right? But it's multi-page, and you don't see the pricing until you're on the next page. And here they're really pushing monthly as opposed to annual or friends and family. And also friends and family, actually, if you have an app that is either multiplayer or you can, you know, share access with the app with like your friends and or your family members, even like through iCloud Family. That's also another good way to bump your LTV or ARPU by having a friends and family kind of plan. I don't see this enough actually, because probably it's, you have to implement more and there's more SDKs from Apple that you have to add to your app. But it does give you like another avenue for larger monetization, especially because most of the time that is an annual plan. And a lot of users will skip like the 1% annual plan and say like, yeah, my family probably, use this app, and they'll have the friends and family pricing on there too.
I have actually never seen a friends and family paywall on a non-native, because I've seen the iCloud one and maybe the Spotify one, I guess, too, but I don't know if Spotify even does mobile paywalls. But that's an interesting insight. People should explore that more. Other thing about this is like it feels like the gold stands out a little bit to me. Like I recently got the Robinhood credit card, and it's like,
oh, nice,
gold, and then it makes you install another app, and then the app is also gold, and then like everything on the app is like black and gold. Do you feel like paywalls that make an app feel more explicitly premium helps to make it higher converting? Because I feel like most of the other paywalls I've seen are standard like white or black with bright colors, but then this one is like, it looks like Amex, or it's like very trying to feel more premium.
Yeah, and I agree, and I actually do that in a lot of my designs. So I want to give you another example for where I do that you can use that type of design to show like, oh, this is a more premium plan, or this is going to be a premium experience, and especially for those apps that are multi-tier. So let me give you an example. This is a paywall that I created for one of my customers in the agency Equals, and they have a Pro and Plus subscription, and Pro is their highest tier one. So they have like weekly, monthly, or quarterly, and I don't have the products here, so like that's kind of why it's not a number and kind of airing out. But the point is, when you have the Pro, the app is white, and so when you have contrast on the paywall, especially you've been going through onboarding, you have a black background, and then all of a sudden you have contrast on the paywall screen, you're conditioning the user to think, oh, something's happening, or oh, okay, like this is different. And then I want users to subscribe to the higher tier option because they get more than if they were in just the Plus subscription. So I have the Plus subscription with the white background, and then I have the Pro background once they switch back to that, because users will play on the paywall. Just go back to that more premium looking design, and as a result, more users subscribe to the Pro plan. Hinge, this paywall is inspired by Hinge, and I can't remember if Hinge does this fade contrast effect, but I knew that I wanted to do it for this paywall because I wanted to have some contrast on it and make it look a little bit more premium.
And then is the actual app interface turned to black also once you finish the paywall?
In this particular case, no. You just kind of pay, subscribe, and then you go in the experience. That would be an interesting product decision. So like once you're subscribed to Pro, then like you change the interface and it kind of stands you out versus someone that's not subscribed, especially if it's a freemium app. So there could be some interesting psychological plays happening there, especially if you're using the app and your friend uses the app and you have, the dark mode type of style and they don't. So it could lead to some interesting social dynamics there. So all interesting things to test.
What is a typical stage of growth that you feel like gets the best results out of like really investing in doing more paywall experiments?
Yeah, I think you get the most returns when you're a large app and you haven't done a lot of A/B testing, because in the first test that you'll run with us, you're we're going to increase your paywall rate, your KPIs, your ARPU, conversion rate, percentage so much that you get immediate like value back from your investment with us. So apps that are making, I would say 100,000 a month, and they haven't done a ton of paywall experimentation because they've been working so much on product. I see the best gains for those kinds of apps. But a lot of my recent customers actually are newer apps, and they're between the $10,000 to $50,000 per month stage. And even with those apps, if we can increase their conversion rate from like 8%, which I see as kind of the average across the board, to 15 to 20% after a couple iterations working with us, that's a huge lift. And you haven't done anything more. You haven't increased your ad spend. You haven't, invested in product. So that also becomes a huge lift for a lot of those companies too.
Great insights. And yeah, Jonathan, it was really good to have you on the pod. We've been in touch since the very beginning of you were one of the first members ever of Consumer Club, and now I'm like at Superwall. So it's cool that we're like crossing paths continuously, and it's like great to full circle just like have you on the pod. But I learned a ton from this, and your insights are always evolving too. So I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to come on later on. And yeah, to anyone watching this too, I'm trying to post more this year. So my X is going to be pretty busy with some of the more insights that I get from just working with so many people like you. So
okay, nice.
Excited to be on, and thanks for having me.
Cool. So yeah, something you might not know, most of the founders I cover on this podcast are hanging out right now in the Consumer Club Discord, sharing with each other what's working now for consumer apps. So you can apply to join Consumer Club if that sounds interesting to you. And this is the Superwall podcast. Of course, you got to check out superwall.com. We have more videos on the channel. So dig into those to learn from app founders who are willing to share super tactical stuff about app growth.